Chapter 22. The Tree Falls. Sometimes, after a heavy rain in Corunna, the ground would be covered with worms. I don't know if they liked to feel the rain on their bodies or if they just had to get out of the ground to avoid drowning, but whatever the case, they'd be stretched out all over the place. However, if you picked one of them up, they would immediately shrivel into something a quarter of their size. This is the only way I can describe what was happening inside the tree. Although it was already enormous, I think some kind of magic made it unfathomably tall. But when Jack began to chop at its trunk, it was as though the magic was seeping away with every stroke, and the tree was shriveling. Each time Jack hit the tree, it would shudder terribly, and the bluish glow from the moss would intensify. In the space between the blows, the tree would feel smaller, and the moss would recede to emit an even duller light. I could almost hear the tree sigh in despair. I felt a tremendous sadness well up in me. Could he actually succeed and cut all the way through the tree? Korath's bane was an amazing weapon, to be sure, but there was also some magic in the tree, wasn't there? Somewhere in its enormous girth there had to be defensive strength that could stop Jack's wicked attempts at chopping it down. I prayed that it was true. If there was, then maybe there was something I could do to help it. Maybe working together, the tree and I could foil Jack's attack. In desperation, I screamed out for Jack to stop. There was a pause from below, so I screamed again. "Taran?" I heard Jack's voice. "Is that you?" I spun around. It was as if he was standing right behind me, but when I looked, I was all alone. I peered down the spiraling staircase. Somewhere down there, hundreds and hundreds of feet below, Jack was standing in the threshold, and yet by some magic of the tree, his voice carried clearly to where I stood. "Jack, stop!" I cried. "Please, stop!" "You don't know when to give up, do you?" There was menace in his voice. "Just let me come down there. We can figure it out." "We've been over this." "I have figured it out. It's just you that's having a hard time catching up." I descended another step. If I could keep him talking, then he wouldn't be chopping. I had a wild hope that I might still be able to redeem this terrible situation. I needed to hold his interest. "Jack, I know we've been over this, but I think you missed some important information." "What information?" "I spoke with Tama when he had me captured. As soon as you have accomplished your goal of creating the new portals, he's going to turn against you. He wants to kill you. I know that you are powerful, but he has the full force of the Fo-Tin. You don't stand a chance." "Tama doesn't know what he's dealing with," countered Jack. "I'm fully aware of his treacherous scheming, and he could be in for a few surprises of his own." I took another step. "Yes, but what if his plans succeed?" I posed. "Listen, you would do well in Corunna. You could go there with Mother and me. You don't need the other giants to succeed there." It was a ridiculous argument, I knew, but I was just saying anything I could think of. "You don't understand a thing, do you, Taran? I don't want to succeed in Corunna. I'm destined for greater things. I want to conquer Corunna. I want to conquer all the humans. I am more giant than you think. Maybe that's what happened when we were born. I got more giant blood and you got more human blood. It would explain why I bested you at every turn. You are weak, Taran. Your dreams are weak. Your arguments are weak. Your hope of victory is weak. It is the strong that survive." There was another thud as Jack chopped at the tree. When the shudder subsided, I cried out again, "Jack, wait! I'm in the tree. If you cut it down now, I won't have a chance. Please, just wait until I can get down there and out of the tree." "I told you, if I ever saw you again, I would kill you. Nothing's changed, Taran. You were a fool to come, and you're going to die in this tree." "Jack, please!" There was no response except for the ominous rhythmic chopping as Jack began again in earnest. I continued my descent as fast as I could, but I noticed that along with the shriveling of the tree came the inability to descend quickly. It felt like I was moving through mud, and I grew mad with frustration. I tried to think of some way of using the stone to stop Jack, but nothing useful came. With 7 more stones, he had 7 times the power. I could wish that the sword would disappear, but he could easily wish it back. I could try to see if I could seal up the gouges he made by the sword, but it would be an easy thing for Jack to counter that as well. I knew that time was running out and I had to come up with something. All of a sudden I felt a lurch, different from the shuddering that I had been experiencing, and the tree tilted a bit to the side. It seemed to hang for an instant in a strange kind of limbo, and then what I dreaded most came true. The tree began to fall. I cried out my grief for the tree's demise. I placed my hands on the inside walls, and with all my might I pressed my sorrow into its veins. I knew it wasn't enough. I knew I couldn't save it, but I wanted it to know that it wasn't forgotten in its last moments of life. Initially, the tilting of the tree was slow. I could only barely feel a shifting of my weight as my body pressed harder to the side. But it didn't take long before the speed started to escalate, the cracking of the wood filling the air. The angle inside the tree was increasing rapidly, and I felt my stomach climb up into my throat. "Jack!" I screamed in desperation. All I heard in response was his maniacal laughter. It floated up through the tree, mocking me. My time had run out. At the rate the tree was falling, it was going to crash into the ground in a matter of seconds, and I had no illusions about walking away from that impact. Then from out of nowhere came the memory of trading places with Rapia in the cell beneath the castle. I didn't have a second to lose. There was no time to weigh the consequences of my decision. Without hesitation, I simply wished that I could trade places with Jack. Several things happened so quickly it was almost as though they occurred at the same time. There was a bright flash, and immediately I was standing at the base of the great tree. I had an instant of seeing it in motion, and then it crashed into the ground. I was shaken off my feet by the sheer weight of it hitting the earth. There was the residual sound of the other trees returning to their upright positions. And then everything went quiet. Jack was nowhere to be seen. The portal tree was destroyed, and I was alive. Beyond that, I was completely clueless as to what had just occurred.